Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War. There must be an angel event in which Urielle the Guardian is added to the game, so let's get into that. As far as the troop itself, it's another one kind of keeping up with the whole potion theme that we've been having lately. Comes within a bunch of green-yellow arcanes, which can just be farmed off of the Warren's faction. It's one of the only factions, actually the only faction, that ends in epic arcane, so you generally don't need to stock up on them, but of course you might still want to get copies of this troop. As far as what it does, it ends up cleansing and giving life to an ally, and it ends up creating 1 to 3 mana potions, specifically of yellow. Of course, we've been getting quite a few of these lately, and we're basically going to get one of every type. If an enemy is death marked, there's a 50% chance to gain next turn. This is a little bit of a weird mechanic, because there aren't too many yellows, particularly divine yellows, that could end up even death marking. It does get to do it off of its skull poke. There is that Nefertania thing, that one mythic that has the option to do it that's still underneath the category of yellow that might have some synergy with it. Overall, it's a very weird condition that's not based on like an ally barrier or something similar, because of course that would be way more in theme with you know, the whole kind of concept of divines and knights and everything that she is. But yeah, I'm not sure why they went down that route. But yeah, the enemy does have to be death marked. If nothing else, its traits are somewhat decent. It has the death touch, so it does get to put the death mark onto them that she needs, of course. Has some spell reduction, has some skull reduction. So pretty similar to a few other troops from Whitehelm, where they have that combination of double reduction both for both types of damages. So overall, not completely horrible. Of course, it's a slightly higher mana cost, 16. I believe the rest of them that we're getting are actually all 16 mana costs. Of them, she is one of the better ones. But I still feel like this mechanic is a little bit inconsistent compared to other methods that you could be doing for mana accumulating, meaning that she's probably not going to be used much. But if nothing else, she gets 20% extra stats if you want to use her this week, and if you want to use her this week, you do get an additional 5 glory as well. And you might notice quite a few decent things have 20% bonus. That is because Divine and Whitehelm have 20% this week, which is nearly the entirety of the kingdom, because a good majority of that kingdom is Divine, of course, so quite a few good 20%. Priest Hero class has it, Guard's Avatar has it, and a few other pretty viable options. So if you want to go try out Divine teams, this is probably the week to do so, since you have a little bit of extra stats to end up utilizing them. As far as the event key drop table, that of course means we are in the Whitehelm restriction. As far as what the Whitehelm has, it's potentially worth opening. Every single thing that you see here, except for the 4 Hall of Guardian troops, are obtainable from opening up the event keys, and there's quite a selection, so probably a good idea to do so. At the lower end, if you don't have it, there's things like Angry Mob, which is kind of like an alternative Thrall in a sense, so it's pretty good for that. As far as like the higher options, you have things like getting a Mercy for the Empower Convert if you don't already have one, the 50% Mana Star to make Tesla work if you have a Tesla but you don't have the 50% Mana Star for Holy Saint Astra, really solid. While not in the event key drop table, Gargoyle, really great damage output. Go get it from the Hall of Guardians, throw it down on there. Pretty useful for quite a few things this week. And if you're looking for the really high end, both the 2 mythics here are really good, so if you're missing both, well, good time to go get them. The Archdiva, while used a little bit less, does give another troop full mana, while also giving them a lot of stats. Really good with a few particular troops within the game, particularly Lord of Slaughter, though there are a couple other instances where it can end up getting utilized, and anything that ever gets like a really high mana cost under mythics or boss troops can end up having some really good synergy potential. And of course, the more noteworthy one, and the one you probably see me using quite a bit overall, and that is Guard's Avatar. So Guard's Avatar is basically Rowain, but super high rarity. It's very useful because it covers 3 colors that Rowain doesn't, while still having a mechanic that is pretty similar to that of Rowain, and that's higher armor means higher damage. So really great alternative for factions when you don't have access to Rowain, but you do have access to Guard's Avatar, because if you can end up giving him a 50% mana start off of Quitten, you end up getting that, and have him so he only ends up needing the 12 instead of the full 24. Of course, Rowain can do similar and go from 12 to 6. However, it's still a very, very nice benefit compared to having to do the full 24 mana cost. And of course, you could do it off of Divines too, but generally it's done off the 50% Knight bonus rather than the currently 40% Divine bonus that still hasn't been buffed back up to 50%. But overall, yeah, probably a good week to throw down event keys, particularly if you're looking for the Mythics, as both Mythics are a pretty good roll. Ideally, Guard's Avatar, but of course, you don't have a choice on which one ends up dropping. But either or, it's not too disappointing if you do end up getting Archdiva instead. The Guard's Avatar, definitely the main thing if you want to throw down a lot of event keys, though do be mindful. Could take about 1,000 to get them, if not more. It is like a, what, a 1% chance, if I'm not mistaken, or 0.1, I mean. That's not where that is. The question mark. It is a 0.11. So, yeah, pretty much. Very low chance, obviously, but still potentially worth if you have a lot of event keys on hold. Aside from that, as far as the event week this week, of course, we have the ward event going on, is spell increase, so any kind of spell damage, going to be really good if you have access to it. One of the best things you could be running for this week, of course, is Guard's Avatar, but there are a few other options as well, but Guard's Avatar with its 20% really high damage outputs is going to absolutely destroy, especially with all that extra spell damage as accessible. Restricted just to Whitehelm, so everything that we saw in the event key drop table is usable for it, including the gargoyles, which you get from Harv Guardians, of course, which is probably one of the best cheaper options. If you're looking for something, get those, because that will definitely help you a lot going through the event. As far as room order, it is a little bit weird. It goes in like the 3 sets where it just gives you the 2 battles and the 4 battles and the 6 battles. Main thing that you need to know is that it's basically rarity order. If you're doing rarity order, you're probably going to be fine. But in the first set, you want to make sure, basically Eldritch Guardian is the worst room you could take. So if you just avoid this one, you're probably going to be fine if you can try to avoid it as much as possible. But basically it goes Eldritch Guardian, the Keeper of Lore, then the Aramis, the Nair May, the Medea, and then it goes all the way to Vashtagan. So basically, if you just remember rarity order and just not to do the Eldritch Guardian, you're probably going to be doing the correct room, mostly because it'll keep limiting you as far as what rooms you even have, especially once you get to past 30 battles, because beyond then, you eventually will just get to a point where you just, keep doing the same battle over and over again, because it will just keep re-rolling that one, and the rest will just be Eldritch Guardians. So at that point, you won't really need to remember anything, and it'll be kind of convenient. But as long as you don't take the Eldritch Guardians, you're probably going to be fine. So if you want to keep it super simple, just do it based on that, and you're probably, for the most part, taking the correct room, and you can go from there. Anyways, aside from other things that we got going on this week, this Tuesday we have ourselves the faction event for Hall of Guardians. Main noteworthy thing there is Gargoyle. Also, you can throw down gems to get more copies of Gargoyle if you don't have the shards to get more. So even more of a reason. I think you can pick up the first one for, what, 90 gems? I believe you get the first one at. And you keep getting them for the tiers. Obviously, it's better just to do it with Chaos Shards, a lot cheaper than doing it with gems. But if you want some guaranteed ones, you can. And it's pretty relevant, as he is probably one of the strongest epics that you even end up getting from any of the factions, and you'll be able to get that tomorrow. So or otherwise you can just throw shards for it now and get it that way, of course. Aside from that, Wednesday we have Peace Pigeon, which is just divine bonus. Thursday we have the class event for Priest. Priest is a bit situational. Main thing holding it back is it doesn't have half mana start. It's also a bit of a weird one in that it has a +2 yellow compared to 2 other hero classes that have +3 to their color. So of course this isn't as viable as often, just because 2 is lower than 3, of course. And the fact that it doesn't have half mana start generally means that that +2 isn't getting fully utilized. And to be able to even use it, you have to use, of course, Divine Shpala, which is from a different kingdom, and it just has that conflict. Overall, generally isn't used unless you're using Divine Protector. That's pretty much the only instance where you're actually going to be using Priest. Of course, that weapon is available in Soulforge this week, but overall, in any other context, it's pretty much never used compared to other hero class options. So very, very rarely used in the current state of the game unless you really want to build around a pure Divine team. It's about the only instance where it really ends up coming out. If nothing else, it does have 20% extra stats this week, so if you want to mess around with it, similar to all Divines, good week to end up doing so. And aside from that, this Friday we're going to be getting, well, as you can see by the timer, a bounty event. And we're going to be getting another troop for Missa Scales when it ends up coming in, which I believe brings Missa Scales to 23 stars. Hall of Guardians, not Hall of Guardians, I mean Whitehelm ends up going to 21 stars as this week. Make it even easier to hit 10 star and 20 star if you haven't already. Good objectives. I believe it gives a armor bonus if you do end up reaching those objectives. Yeah, a little bit extra armor. So a little bit extra damage for things like Rowain and Guard's Avatar. Aside from that, as far as Soulforge is concerned, kind of funny one, Pharaoh Nafatania. Of course, this wasn't intended since it's kind of random what ends up appearing here. However, this is actually pretty good synergy with the new troop that just came out. It is undead, so it doesn't have the divine synergy. However, it is a yellow that gets the death mark. So it has that synergy with the new troop that just came out. Overall, obviously, it's not worth getting this just to use it with that troop. And even in that combination, I still feel like it's going to be a bit underwhelming. However, it technically has synergy with it. So if you have been wanting to get it, if it's one of the only like dozen of the last mythics you still have left, could be okay to mess around with it with the new troop. Overall, probably not worth going out of your way for. Pretty much anything in Soulforge this week, at least as far as troops aren't really worth going out of your way for. Maybe Dragon Soul if you just started out in the game and you happen to have 800 diamonds and you haven't crafted anything yet, if you're still early on. While this has fallen off in recent years, it is still a really good way to just passively get souls while doing a pretty substantial amount of damage. This can do up to 20 damage if you're using a pure dragon team earlier on in the game. And if you're at a certain point really early on, 20 damage to everything is pretty solid. At minimum, it's doing 11 to everything. So if you're earlier on enough in the game where that actually seems like a high number, it could be okay to passively gain souls and everything. However, it is increasingly falling off as stats keep going higher and higher, as it does not gain much of a benefit beyond having higher stats compared to other troops. So it keeps increasingly getting worse over time, but still a pretty good early game option nonetheless. And I guess Imp of Love, it's normally available in February and March. However, if you want to get it now, if you're getting them for completionist purposes, it is around right now. I wouldn't really bother, but if you want to, just for the sake of it is around. Anyways, aside from that, we do have, oh yeah, I forgot, this Angel of Death, you do get it from the current world event. If you throw down 500 gems, you get this for free. Well, you know, not for free, for 500 gems, but you know, if you're already kind of going that far, it's not too much more to invest into that if you already have a guild that has a requirement where you need to do a bunch of battles for. Anyways, might as well put in a little bit extra gems, go all the way to 500 and get the weapon and not need to use the crafting material on it. However, if you are going to craft it, it's costs that amount of material. Otherwise, it will start costing more. It'll end up costing similar to that amount of material if you wait until not this week. So good time to either get it through gems through the world event, which is the preferred method, or craft it in Soulforge while it is cheaper this week. Otherwise, it'll be 50% more expensive to get it in the future. So just to kind of get it for completionist purposes. It's not a good weapon. It's a really horrible weapon. But you'd get it just for, you know, kingdom upgrading purposes and stuff like that. If you're looking for actual good weapons, main noteworthy one is probably Divine Protector and Fist of Heaven. Guardian Hammer is noteworthy this week. More so in that it's pretty good for the current event week we have. You're restricted to Whitehelm, so obviously you have to use your pure Whitehelm team to begin with. So it has some pretty good synergy there. But overall, when it's not this kind of week, it's not as useful. However, two that do maintain their value pretty well are Fist of Heaven and Divine Protector. Divine Protector, really good if you're doing a 4 times Divine team, especially since if you're doing a 4 times Divine team, one of your troops are going to be Divine Shpala, and yellow feeds into almost every Divine in the game, as well as red being really good because that'll be red Skull Convert that you'll end up getting on Divine Shpala, so you get a really heavy Skull spam off it. Also, if you're using Divine Shpala Quillen combo, which is probably one of the most noteworthy things this gets used for, has really good synergy in both those degrees because you end up getting the higher Skull spam, and it feeds yellow into both of them. Plus the red, of course, when it's initially taken, also feeds into the Quillen for more Skull spam. It does end up using green-blue as well, which if you're not using Mercy on your team, ends up working out pretty well because, you know, just kind of just fills the spot instead of having Mercy. It's the exact same color, so it ends up working out really, really nice in those kind of situations. The other one that's pretty good to get is Fist of Heaven. I feel like these days I use this one probably the most out of any weapon that is available this week in the Soulforge. Ends up exploding a bunch of yellow gems and then grants a random status effect to all Divines, and then summons a random Divine troop. So a pretty standard, kind of similar weapon to quite a few that already exist. Overall, it's just, you know, just kind of one of the solid ones. The main reason why it's good is just so many Divines in the game, quite a few Divine Mythics as well, so it has that kind of synergy in that regard. Aside from that, if you're looking for some other thing to possibly craft, there's Doom Sculpture. I wouldn't advise going out of your way for this, however, it is one of the slightly better tomes. It ends up having Barrier on cast as well. Ends up countering out on Yellow Guild War Day, as all the tomes do. It's not a must-have weapon to get, and it's definitely probably the lowest priority, like the last one that you'd want to get of these. However, of course, it is used for Guild War Defense. You probably see it on Yellow Guild War Day. It is very annoying. Guild War Week is next week, so you can get it in preparation for that if you so choose. It's a lot weaker if you don't have the Doom Scrolls to fully upgrade it, which hopefully it'll do something about that soon, because gosh, are those scrolls so annoying to get. And do keep in mind, if you are going to get this, it is higher priority to go and upgrade to Doom Skull related converting full AoE Doom Skull weapons first, as far as the Doom weapons, rather than getting the books, because the books are pretty much only used for Guild War Defense, so quite a bit lower priority, but if you want to get it, it is around, so worth mentioning nonetheless. Anyways, let's go and get over to a bunch of teams. So let's start all the way from the top over here. So for the world event, you probably already saw in the other menu, we're basically just going to use a Mercy to rush up our mana. You could end up using Hero with a weapon if you so choose. I just figured we'd go for Mercy just to have Empower. This feeds directly into Guard's avatar. Guard avatar then auto wins, and you're good to go. Not only does he have 20% extra stats, but of course you do have the spell damage increase. So as long as he doesn't get poked, he'll just destroy. And we have Archdiva here, definitely not required. However, if you do have it, you can end up using it for a gigantic buff to not only its armor, but also to get it to full mana. So basically you do Mercy, you have ideally both of them to full mana if you get a really good Mercy. Then you cast Guard's Avatar, use Archdiva onto Guard's Avatar, cast Guard's Avatar again, and boom, you probably killed up to realistically any point. Definitely at least up to tier 4. Probably even further, depending on how far you're going. Unless you're going like really deep on leaderboard. That should be able to last you for most of the time. Just being able to go double cast like that, especially with the amount of extra armor that you're going to be getting for the second cast, so should be pretty solid. Angry Mob's kind is here for the little bit of extra mana accumulation. It's basically like Thrall, but not Thrall. It essentially does the exact same thing as what he would do. A little bit of a damage poke, and if Mercy somehow dies, it also gets to resummon another Angry Mob in that location, so you basically have infinite frontline tanks. So you're pretty much good to go. As far as the lower rarity one, you could literally just spam a billion gargoyles. That is probably the best way to go as far as looking for lower rarity things. It is an epic, however, it's a faction epic, so it's a lot easier to obtain. If you don't currently have it, you can throw Chaos Shards at Hall of Guardians, as I mentioned earlier, and alternatively, you can also get copies of it tomorrow during the Hall of Guardians faction event. So if you want to end up getting it that way and you don't want to use your shards necessarily, you can end up doing it and just getting copies through gems tomorrow. So either or, there are a lot of ways to get Gargoyle, and you should probably be doing so, as it is amazing, even when it doesn't have 10% extra stats. It's just always pretty solid kind of damage source. It ends up doing a bunch of extra damage based on attack across your team, and ends up hitting pretty hard in most situations. Really good at those lower level range, and when he has extra spell damage for the game mode, he should be able to hit for pretty much the whole time. He has score reduction, he has spell reduction, pretty tanky, he's not really going to die much. Pretty much good all rounded, even has a little bit of explosion to go with it. As far as the faction, I feel like I keep showing very similar faction teams lately, but kind of even more relevant than ever to kind of show a Guard's Avatar one. So this is what I was mentioning earlier with Sir Quentin Hadley. Of course, you could do this for 50% mana start to all knights. Guard's Avatar is a knight, not only a knight, but a knight that has 20% extra bonus this week. But of course, his main premise is he's basically Rowain, but AoE. Generally, if you can get away with Rowain, you want to use Rowain instead. However, in a yellow-brown restriction, you obviously can't use something like Rowain, so Guard's Avatar is the alternative. Aside from that, as far as going through the entire thing, since you do have access to yellow in both the first and final battle, particularly the final battle has a lot of yellow. I believe the final battle is triple yellow, so you end up getting a lot of kills there. Actually, I believe both of them might be triple yellow, and you'll end up doing double damage off of that. You feed your mana, you can use any weapon that's divisible by, or somewhere around 12 to 18 mana costs. Nimbus Bow is the best option, but anything from 12 to 18 is going to be pretty solid there, and you basically just win that way by constantly getting its mana back up and poking them over and over again, and it runs literally all the way from 20 to 500. As far as pure faction, a couple different ways to run this. I believe this was the way I ultimately end up doing it, without potions as well. It's one of only 2 factions we end up doing potionless. One really easy one, which was Crypt, and one really hard one, which is Hall of Guardians. I highly do not advise trying to do this place without potions, though of course similar to every location is possible too. But overall, biggest threat on the pure faction is by far the Gargoyle. Your goal is to kill that Gargoyle as quickly as you possibly can. You basically want to spam your Gargoyles at their Gargoyles. You can use Ethereal Sentry to boost up your attack, which also increases Gargoyle damage. And basically, you just keep buffing up your Silent Sentinel, have that to be really high attack. You have your Gargoyles, boost ratio off the rest of your team. You end up doing that to kill all the main objectives. In the first fight, that is the double Gargoyle. And on the second fight, that is the singular Gargoyle, or in the final fight, I should say. It's more devastating on the final fight, mostly because of how high its stats are. It can nearly end up one-shotting you, depending on what your stat lines are. With potions, it should pretty much be a cakewalk, but without potions, it is very, very devastating. Main gimmick to end up utilizing too is the silence that it has. So one other alternative that you can end up doing is actually killing out the first slot if you feel like they have the capability to do so, and then end up getting the Gargoyle that's on the opposing team that's in second slot silence by having them bait into a skull into Silent Sentinel. So instead of necessarily going and killing out the Gargoyle quickly, you can kill out their first slot quickly, and then end up getting the Gargoyle silence. Regardless, your main goal is to dispose of the final Gargoyle as quickly as humanly possible, either by destroying first slot and getting a silence, or just outright killing it, because it starting to attack you will basically lead to an auto lose, so gotta be careful with that. And as far as the Priest class events, we have ourselves Dawnbringer, pretty much just a standard kind of Dawnbringer build. We just go all in on Dawnbringer, use a Mercy to feed it mana. Paladins can just back up to feed the yellow links. And that's pretty much the whole premise here. You can end up going with any kind of quick kill weapon method, though any kind of the bigger yellow weapons will end up working out really well. If you don't end up having this, you can end up using the cheaper yellow weapon as well, which I actually forget what it's called off the top of my head. I know it has dance in it. There it goes. The Dancing Daggers, so you can end up going with Dancing Daggers instead. It's 250 wins off the Drifting Sands hero class, so you can end up doing that if you don't have Dawnbringer yet. But ideally, use Dawnbringer into it, pretty much good to go. Use a single Mercy, get your mana up, have extra mana off the Paladins, and if you want, you could even cast the Paladins if you need a cleanup, because of course that 100% revive troop's probably going to be there, so he can end up one-shotting that if nothing else, so should overall be a pretty straightforward and relatively easy class event. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for everything this week. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments section below. Thank you all so much for watching. Of course, tonight, as we do every single night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be streaming here on this YouTube channel, and we'll be going over all of the Chapter 6 tasks. Anyways, guys, I'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone.